12 luxury SUVs, Mercedes, Range Rovers, Teslas, tore through my Texas cattle pasture. Again, pregnant cows panicked and scattered while these smug drivers waved at my security cams like it was their private road. They're not neighbors. They're from a fake HOA called Willowbrook Estates that suddenly claims my 40 acres belongs on their map. Their president blocked my truck last week, engine still rumbling.
Sell now at our price, or we'll make sure your ranch can't function. We've done it to 3 others already.
Trespassing like this in Texas? Straight up criminal. But they figured this quiet rancher would cave under pressure. Big mistake. I didn't yell or call the sheriff right away. Instead, I did something permanent they never saw coming. Something that ends their little joy rides for good. What would you do if entitled bullies tried to steal your land inch by inch? Drop your state below. How strong are property rights where you are? Stay tuned. Their reaction when it hit them was priceless. My name's Jed Hawkins, 52 years old, retired Army Corps of Engineers. And 3 months ago, I thought I'd found paradise. 40 acres of rolling Texas prairie, an 1890s farmhouse with good bones, and heritage cattle grazing under century-old oak trees. Morning coffee on the wraparound porch, creaking boards under my boots, the sweet smell of prairie grass mixed with wildflowers, meadowlarks calling from weathered fence posts worn smooth by decades of Texas weather. I'd invested every penny of my life savings, $340,000, into this dream. After 20 years building bridges and defusing bombs for Uncle Sam, I wanted peace, real peace. Raising organic beef, having my teenage daughter Emma visit more than just court-mandated weekends. Then I discovered some entitled suburbanites had decided my property belonged to them. Tuesday morning, 1 week after moving in, I'm fixing a gate when multiple engines roar across my back pasture. Through the morning mist comes a convoy of luxury vehicles treating my cattle land like their personal highway, the metallic taste of adrenaline hitting my mouth as I realize what I'm seeing. Leading the pack. A silver Mercedes G-Wagon with vanity plates reading HOA-PREZ. Behind it, a white Range Rover, 2 Audis, and a Tesla worth more than most people's houses. They're cutting straight through my grazing land, scattering my pregnant heifers and leaving deep tire ruts in the soft earth. The Mercedes stops in front of me. Out steps this guy in pressed khakis and a country club polo, looking like he's never seen actual dirt that wasn't on a golf course. Designer sunglasses, perfectly styled hair, the kind of fake smile that makes your teeth itch. Bryce Kellerton, he announces, extending a manicured hand. President of Willowbrook Estates HOA, we need to discuss your property's integration into our community access infrastructure. Here's what I learned later. Willowbrook Estates isn't actually an HOA. It's just a regular subdivision built 5 years ago with zero legal authority over anything outside their little kingdom of McMansions. But Bryce here appointed himself president and started acting like he runs the county. You're what now? I ask, holding the fence post his convoy just destroyed. Established traffic easement, he says, pulling out official-looking papers. Martha Hendricks allowed neighborhood access for years. We've acquired prescriptive rights through continuous use. That's when the Range Rover disgorges its driver, a bleached blonde woman with the aggressive posture of someone who built a career on intimidating people into compliance. The sharp smell of her designer perfume cuts through the morning air like a warning. Sutton Blackwood, property acquisition specialist, she says, shoving a business card at me. I handle problematic transitional real estate situations. We should discuss your exit strategy before this gets expensive. Their documentation looks official, but here's the legal reality. Texas property code requires 10+ years of open, notorious hostile use without permission for prescriptive easements. Martha Hendricks died just 8 months ago, and she'd been in assisted living for 3 years before that. Always research the actual legal requirements before believing fancy paperwork from self-appointed authorities. 3 rural properties in this area have recently sold to development-friendly buyers, Sutton continues, lowering her voice like she's doing me a favor. Much simpler than fighting permit battles, zoning complications, and those agricultural inspection issues that can shut down operations overnight. My cattle dog, General Patton, yes, I named him that, chooses this moment to trot over and lift his leg on Bryce's pristine Mercedes. The stream hits the driver's side door with a satisfying splatter, and I swear that dog looks proud of himself. Think about it. Bryce says through gritted teeth, wiping dog urine off his luxury vehicle. Cattle ranching is hard work, especially when dealing with community relations issues and regulatory compliance problems that can make farming unprofitable. Their convoy disappears across my pasture, leaving diesel fumes hanging in the air and my daughter's college fund sitting on 40 acres that suddenly feels a lot less secure. That's when it hits me. This isn't about easements. This is organized extortion designed to force me out so they can expand their suburban empire. They picked the wrong Army engineer to scam. 2 days later, Bryce made his first real move, and he did it while my daughter was visiting. I'm having breakfast with Emma when we hear the rumble of multiple engines approaching. Through the kitchen window, I count 15 luxury SUVs forming what looks like a military convoy across my pasture. The metallic clink of Emma's spoon hitting her cereal bowl stops as she stares outside. "Dad, what's that about?" "Neighbors with boundary issues," I tell her, but my jaw's already clenching. These people are escalating, and they're doing it while my 16-year-old is here, which feels intentional. The convoy stops near my cattle pond, engines idling like predators. Bryce steps out carrying what appears to be an official county clipboard, followed by Sutton with a tablet and measuring tape. They're documenting everything: fence lines, structures, even the distance between my house and the property line. I walk out to meet them, General Patton trotting beside me with his ears alert. The morning air carries the acrid smell of diesel exhaust mixing with the sweet scent of alfalfa from my hay barn. "Property assessment," Bryce announces without looking up. Willowbrook residents filed a formal complaint with the county about unpermitted agricultural structures affecting neighborhood property values. Sutton holds up her tablet, showing what looks like an official county website. Commercial cattle operations require special permits in areas adjacent to residential developments. We're ensuring compliance. Now I'd spent 3 days at the courthouse after their first visit, researching every deed and zoning record. My ranch has had agricultural zoning since 1890. Their subdivision was built knowing there was an active cattle operation next door. Back when I was defusing IEDs in Afghanistan, I learned to spot when someone's trying to sell you bullshit wrapped in official paper. "This land predates your subdivision by 130 years, I tell them. "Zoning can change," Bryce replies with that synthetic smile, "especially when community safety and property values are at stake. We represent 47 families whose investments are being impacted by incompatible land use." That's when I notice something that makes my blood run cold. Sutton's tablet isn't just showing county websites. It's displaying detailed photographs of my property taken from inside my fence line. Close-ups of my cattle barn, equipment shed, even shots of my house windows taken from angles only possible by someone standing in my pasture. "Where did you get those photos?" "Public records," Sutton says smoothly, but her eyes dart away. "Available through county assessment databases. I've seen those databases. They're satellite imagery and basic property sketches, not ground-level surveillance photos taken from inside private property." After Emma leaves for her mom's house, and after I spend 20 minutes reassuring her that everything's fine, I drive to the hardware store, 6 trail cameras, motion sensors, solar charging units. If someone's been taking surveillance photos on my land, I'm going to catch them. That night, while installing the cameras, I remember something from my Corps of Engineers training. In Texas, criminal trespass laws require clearly posted signs at entry points, but you can also use recorded evidence of repeated unauthorized entry to establish harassment patterns. The key is documentation. Modern security cameras hold up in court, but only if you follow proper posting requirements. The next morning brings a new surprise. Checking fence lines, I find a surveyor's stake driven into my pasture 50 feet from the property line. Fresh orange paint marks a path running directly through my cattle operation toward the county road. The stake has a metal tag, Willowbrook Estates Community Development Survey, Phase 2. Phase 2 of what? That's when Dorothy Pemberton drives up in her ancient Buick. Dorothy's 78, been living in Willowbrook since construction started, and she's got the kind of sharp eyes that catalog every neighbor's business. The crunch of gravel under her tires sounds like judgment approaching. "Jed, we need to talk. Bryce called an emergency HOA meeting last night. You weren't invited, but you were definitely the main topic." She hands me meeting minutes through her rolled-down window. Apparently, Willowbrook residents voted to authorize necessary legal action to resolve agricultural compliance issues with adjacent properties. 15 in favor, 12 against, 20 families didn't bother attending. "Here's what you need to know," Dorothy continues. her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've been digging through my old files from when this place was built. The developer promised county commissioners they'd construct a proper access road connecting to the county highway. They posted a $300,000 bond for road construction." She pauses, letting that sink in while General Patton sniffs suspiciously at her car's undercarriage. That road was never built. The money disappeared into consulting fees and environmental studies. Bryce's consulting company received most of those contracts. The morning sun glints off that surveyor's stake like a warning beacon. Everything suddenly clicks into place with the satisfying precision of a correctly wired explosive device. This isn't just about forcing me to sell my ranch. This is about covering up a $500,000 development fraud that goes back 5 years. That surveyor's stake was just the beginning. 3 days later, I wake to heavy machinery rumbling across my property. Through my bedroom window, I see a county code enforcement truck at my gate, followed by what appears to be a soil testing crew with a drilling rig. The bitter taste of morning coffee turns metallic as I realize what's happening. "Randy Morrison, County Planning," announces the tired-looking officer holding a clipboard thick with forms. "Multiple complaints about unpermitted structures and environmental violations on this property." Behind him, 2 guys in hard hats unload soil testing equipment. The morning air fills with diesel growls as their machinery starts up, and General Patton immediately begins barking at the invaders like they're enemy combatants. "What complaints?" Randy flips through paperwork, clearly uncomfortable. "Unpermitted cattle waste storage, groundwater contamination potential, structures without setback permits, and commercial livestock operation violating residential proximity ordinances." Every complaint is complete bullshit. My organic operation is cleaner than most suburban pools. But someone's weaponizing county bureaucracy, forcing expensive inspections that'll drain my resources. Who filed these? "Anonymous online portal submissions," Randy mumbles, watching the drilling crew position their rig next to my cattle pond. That's when I spot Bryce's Mercedes parked on the county road just outside my property line. He's filming the entire enforcement action through his windshield like he's documenting a military victory. The soil testing takes 4 hours and costs taxpayers $3,000. Results: clean water, healthy soil, 0 violations. My cattle operation is environmentally pristine, exactly as I'd maintained it. But that afternoon brings the real gut punch. Emma calls, sobbing. "Dad, someone posted photos of our ranch on Facebook saying you're running an illegal factory farm. Kids at school are asking if you're poisoning their water supply." My hands shake as she reads the Facebook post from Willowbrook Community Safety Watch. Photos of my normal cattle operation with captions about industrial agricultural threats and environmental hazards endangering children. The photos are identical to the surveillance shots I'd seen on Sutton's tablet. That night, checking my trail camera footage, I hit the jackpot. At 2:17 a.m., Sutton's Range Rover pulls up to my back fence. She gets out with professional camera equipment, cuts through my fence wire, and spends 20 minutes photographing my cattle barn from multiple angles. Crystal clear footage, license plate, face, wire cutters in action, trespassing, property damage, and surveillance for harassment purposes, all documented in high definition. But instead of calling the sheriff, I make a tactical decision. If they're running this scam on multiple targets, I need intelligence on the full operation before launching my counterattack. Next morning at the courthouse, I request records on those 3 properties Dorothy mentioned. What I discover makes my jaw clench with familiar combat anger. Identical harassment patterns, anonymous environmental complaints, county inspections, social media smear campaigns questioning agricultural operations. All 3 owners faced mounting legal bills and community pressure. All eventually sold to Blackwood Property Solutions at 30 to 40% below market value. I'm staring at documentation of systematic land fraud. Helen, the county clerk who's worked here 20 years, leans across the counter with the conspiratorial air of someone who's seen too much bureaucratic nonsense. Know what's interesting about those sales? Every property that got bought is sitting empty. No development, no improvements, just vacant land with for sale signs. She pulls up a property map on her computer. See the pattern? They're creating a buffer zone around Willowbrook, buying rural properties and leaving them undeveloped. Drives up subdivision values while eliminating agricultural operations. The sweet smell of old paper files can't mask the bitter reality I'm seeing. This is organized real estate fraud with multiple victims and a clear financial motive, but here's where they made their fatal mistake. I drive straight to Austin and visit my old Army buddy Jake Martinez, who now runs a private investigation firm specializing in financial crimes. After reviewing my evidence, Jake grins like Christmas morning. "Jed, this is a federal case waiting to happen. Wire fraud, conspiracy, possibly RICO violations if we can prove organized criminal enterprise, but we need more evidence before involving federal authorities." That's when inspiration strikes with the clarity of a perfectly planned demolition. What if we gave them a bigger target, I ask? Something so tempting they'd accelerate their timeline and make mistakes? Jake raises an eyebrow. What kind of target? What if word got out that I'm considering selling, that the harassment is working and I'm getting desperate? The grin that spreads across Jake's face reminds me why he was the best intelligence officer in our unit. Bait operation. Get them overconfident, document everything, then spring the trap. Walking back to my truck, I feel that familiar pre-mission focus settling over me. They want to play psychological warfare with a combat engineer? Game on. The bait worked better than I'd hoped. Word travels fast in rural Texas, especially when you want it to. I made sure to mention my financial struggles to the feed store owner, complained about mounting legal costs at the diner, and had a very loud phone conversation about maybe needing to sell while standing in line at the bank where half of Willowbrook does their banking. Within 48 hours, Sutton Blackwood was circling like a vulture who'd spotted fresh roadkill. Tuesday morning, her Range Rover crunches up my gravel drive. She steps out in a sharp business suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, designer heels clicking against stone like a countdown timer. "Jed, I heard through the grapevine that you might be reconsidering your position on the ranch," she purrs, pulling out a leather portfolio thick with official-looking documents. I represent several clients who'd be very interested in a quick, clean transaction. I play my part perfectly, shoulders slumped, tired expression, the picture of a defeated man running out of options. This whole situation is getting expensive. County inspections, legal consultations, that social media nonsense affecting my daughter? Completely understandable, Sutton coos, her predatory smile widening like she's already counting commission dollars. Rural life isn't for everyone, especially with community integration challenges. My clients are prepared to make a very generous offer. Cash, 30-day closing, no inspections needed. She slides a purchase agreement across my kitchen table. The offer is $280,000, almost $60,000 below what I paid 3 months ago. This seems low for current market value, I say, trying to sound desperate rather than disgusted. Well, there are environmental concerns, zoning complications, community relations issues. She waves her manicured hand dismissively. Properties with these complications require significant discounts, but cash talks, and this offer could solve all your problems immediately. That's when she makes her fatal mistake, the kind of overconfident slip that would have gotten her killed in a combat zone. "Between you and me," she leans closer, lowering her voice to what she thinks is a conspiratorial whisper, "we've successfully facilitated similar transitions for 3 other rural properties in this area. The owners were initially resistant, but once they understood the full scope of potential complications, regulatory harassment, community pressure, infrastructure conflicts, they realized selling was their smartest option. Perfect." She just confessed to systematic property manipulation on a kitchen that my old Army buddy Jake Martinez helped me wire for sound and video yesterday. "I need to think about it," I tell her, maintaining my defeated farmer act. "Of course, but don't wait too long," Sutton warns, her mask slipping to reveal the shark underneath. "These community issues tend to escalate when they're not addressed promptly. Code enforcement gets more aggressive, environmental complaints multiply, social media concerns snowball. They have a way of becoming quite overwhelming for families with children." After she leaves, trailing expensive perfume and implied threats, I call Jake with the good news. We've got her confession on high-definition video, clear admission of systematic harassment, and implicit threats about escalating pressure if I don't comply. But that afternoon, Bryce crosses a line that turns this from property dispute into something much more personal. I'm repairing fence wire that Sutton's midnight photography crews keep cutting when I hear Emma screaming from the house. Racing inside, I find her in tears, staring at her laptop screen with the kind of terror that makes a father's protective instincts go nuclear. "Dad, they posted my school schedule online and photos of me getting off the bus." My vision goes red-tinted, the way it used to before combat missions. On her screen is a Facebook post from concerned Willowbrook parents featuring pictures of Emma walking to the school bus stop along with her class schedule and a warning about children from unstable agricultural environments attending local schools. They just made this about my daughter. Game over. General Patton seems to sense the shift in atmospheric pressure, positioning himself between Emma and the front door like he's preparing for siege warfare. That night, I don't sleep. Instead, I sit on my porch with my service pistol across my knees, every trail camera feeding live video to my phone. The sweet Texas night air carries the distant lowing of settling cattle, but all I can focus on is the fact that someone photographed my 16-year-old daughter. At 3:17 a.m., motion sensors trigger along my back fence line. Through night vision scope, I watch three figures with professional surveillance equipment setting up what looks like a permanent observation post in the woods bordering my property. They're installing a camouflage trail camera aimed directly at my house, along with wireless antenna equipment. This isn't random harassment anymore, it's organized stalking with federal implications. But here's what they don't know. Jake's contacts have been monitoring their communications for days. Federal authorities are already building a case. Time to give them something too tempting to resist. Dorothy Pemberton changed everything with a phone call at 6 a.m. Jed, get dressed and put coffee on. I'm bringing someone who's going to blow your mind, and she's got evidence that'll put Bryce in federal prison. 20 minutes later, Dorothy's ancient Buick crunches up my gravel drive carrying the most dangerous passenger I've ever seen. A sharp-eyed woman in her 60s wearing a crisp business suit and carrying a briefcase that practically screams, "Financial Crimes Prosecutor." Margaret Smith, forensic accountant. She introduces herself with the kind of firm handshake that's destroyed white-collar criminals across 3 states. Dorothy called me after finding something explosive in her basement files last night. They spread documents across my kitchen table with military precision. The papers smell like old cardboard boxes and future courtroom victories, and General Patton immediately positions himself under the table like he senses incoming artillery. Dorothy saved financial records from Willowbrook's original development, Margaret explains, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's testified before federal grand juries. What we found is systematic embezzlement that makes your harassment look like amateur hour. She slides the first bombshell across weathered pine, the original development agreement requiring a $300,000 county bond for road construction connecting Willowbrook to public highways. Signed in 2018, stamped and notarized, legally binding. Here's the beautiful part, Margaret continues, producing bank records. That road was never built. The bond money went to Phoenix Development Solutions, Bryce's company, for preliminary studies and environmental assessments. Dorothy can barely contain herself. Tell him about the consulting gravy train. Over 3 years, Phoenix Development received $847,000 in county contracts, Margaret says, tracing paper trails with the satisfaction of a hunter tracking wounded prey. Road studies never completed, environmental reports that don't exist, traffic analyses for phantom projects. The scope of this fraud hits me like a mortar blast. So Bryce has been stealing county money while using my land as his free road? It's more calculated than that, Margaret explains. When residents complained about traffic problems from the missing road, Bryce convinced them they had established access rights through private properties. He turned your ranch into his solution for infrastructure he was paid to build legitimately. Dorothy pulls out correspondence that makes my jaw clench. Letters between Bryce and Martha Hendricks going back 2 years. He told that sweet old woman the traffic through her land was temporary while road construction was finalized. Martha died believing that road would be built. Dorothy's voice trembles with righteous anger. She let neighbors cross her property as a favor, never knowing she was enabling massive fraud. Margaret leans forward with the predatory focus of a prosecutor smelling blood. Every day Bryce uses private property to avoid his legal road building obligation, he commits federal wire fraud. Every email about access rights is criminal conspiracy evidence. But she's not finished destroying Bryce's world. Dorothy found insurance documents too, Margaret says with a prosecutor's smile that could freeze hell. Phoenix collected $180,000 from county liability insurance for unforeseen geological complications that supposedly prevented road construction. She produces engineering reports that smell like fresh photocopier toner. The geology reports were completely fabricated. I've had independent engineers review the soil conditions. They're perfect for road construction, always have been. Dorothy grins like a grandmother who just caught her grandson with his hand in the cookie jar. We've got enough evidence to put that lying snake away for 20 years and recover every stolen penny. Staring at these documents scattered across my kitchen table, I feel the entire tactical situation flip like a perfectly executed ambush. This isn't about defending my ranch anymore. This is about taking down a criminal enterprise that's been robbing an entire county. But first, I need to make sure Bryce can't destroy evidence when the federal hammer drops. Time to set the perfect trap. The steel bollards were my idea, but turning them into the perfect trap required everything I'd learned in 20 years of military engineering. You want to do what? Jake Martinez asks, nearly spilling coffee across my hand-drawn blueprints spread across his kitchen table. Retractable steel bollards, I explain, pointing to schematics that would make my old demolitions instructor proud. 8-inch diameter structural steel posts, 4 feet deep in reinforced concrete. Hydraulic mechanism allows remote operation from 200 yards away. Margaret Smith, who joined our war council, raises an eyebrow with the skepticism of someone who's seen too many civilian revenge fantasies crash in court. Isn't that a bit extreme? Ma'am, they threaten my daughter and have been systematically stealing from county taxpayers for years, I reply, tasting the familiar metallic edge of pre-mission determination. When Bryce's convoy hits these barriers at 30 miles per hour, it'll be the most educational physics lesson of their entitled lives. The engineering is beautiful in its deadly simplicity. Grade 50 structural steel rated for 50,000-pound impact resistance, strong enough to stop a runaway semi. The hydraulic system delivers 3,000 psi of pressure through solar-powered pumps with battery backup. Rise time, 3 seconds flat. Not enough warning for speeding trespassers, but plenty of time for emergency vehicles to stop safely. Jake studies my blueprints with the appreciation of someone who's watched my demolition work level Taliban strongholds. Fail-safes, defaults to raise position if power fails, manual override for legitimate service vehicles. LED warning system activates 5 seconds before deployment. I point to the remote control specifications, completely legal under Texas property defense statutes. From my core training, I remembered the key legal principle. Texas property code allows defensive barriers on private land without permits, provided they're properly marked and give reasonable warning to potential trespassers. Documentation is everything. Professional installation, clear signage, and evidence that intruders had multiple opportunities to avoid the hazard. Takeaway: property defense systems are completely legal when engineered correctly and installed on your own land with proper warnings. Dorothy volunteers her house as tactical command center. Perfect sightlines to your back fence from my kitchen window, she explains, spreading survey maps like a general planning an invasion. When their convoy comes through in formation, I can radio exact timing and vehicle count. Margaret produces federal warrants thick enough to stop bullets. Authorities are positioned for immediate arrest the moment they trespass, but we need them caught red-handed with witnesses present for maximum impact. Installation day arrives with military precision. Day 1. Excavation hits bedrock at exactly 4 feet, and my ranch's backhoe chews through Texas clay like it's angry at the earth itself. The sharp smell of diesel exhaust mixes with fresh-turned soil as I dig foundations that could anchor a bridge. Day 2. Tommy Johnson's machine shop becomes our armory. Tommy served 2 Iraq tours and thinks this project is the most righteous engineering he's ever witnessed. Welding sparks fly like angry fireflies as we cut structural steel to specification. Jed, he grins through his face shield. Those entitled pricks are about to discover why you don't mess with combat engineers. Day 3. Hydraulic installation requires the patience of a bomb disposal expert. Each connection must be perfect. One leak could turn my defensive system into an expensive lawn ornament. The satisfying thunk of pressure fittings locking into place sounds like victory approaching. General Patton supervises the entire operation like a furry project manager, positioning himself at optimal vantage points and barking approval when components fit perfectly. That dog has better tactical awareness than most officers I've served under. Day 4. The warning system is my masterpiece. Motion sensors trigger LED lights bright enough to guide aircraft, mounted on reflective posts with crystal clear, danger, automated security system signage. 5-second warning provides legal protection while ensuring criminal trespassers get exactly what they deserve. Emma calls during final calibration. Dad, Bryce drove past my school again today. Mom's talking about getting a restraining order. Don't worry, sweetheart. I tell her, watching Bollards rise and fall in perfect hydraulic symphony. This situation resolves itself tomorrow. Margaret's federal contacts confirm intercepted communications showing Bryce planning a decisive pressure demonstration involving the entire subdivision. Apparently, he believes one massive convoy will force me into complete submission. The night before deployment, I sit on my porch testing the remote control system. The mechanical whir of bollards extending under pressure sounds like justice being served with German engineering precision. Evening prairie grass carries its sweet scent, while fresh hydraulic fluid adds an industrial note that reminds me of perfectly maintained military equipment. Dorothy's voice crackles through tactical radio. "Jed, they're organizing something big. I count 15 vehicles gathering in subdivision parking areas." "This is it." Jake confirms from his position. "Federal agents positioned and ready. Media contacts confirmed for live coverage. Tomorrow's going to be legendary." Looking at my perfectly engineered trap gleaming under Texas stars, I feel the calm focus that always preceded successful missions. 20 years of military experience taught me that the best defense is overwhelmingly effective offense. Tomorrow, Bryce learns why you never threaten a combat engineer's family. The night before my trap springs, Bryce made his biggest mistake yet, and I caught every criminal second on camera. At 11:47 p.m., motion sensors trigger as he personally leads a sabotage crew onto my property. Not just Sutton this time. 3 men with professional equipment, bolt cutters, and what looks like industrial vandalism gear. The sharp smell of cut metal fills the night air as they systematically destroy my cattle watering system. Through night vision scope, I watch them plant road spikes along my access routes, cut fence wire in 6 locations, and pour what appears to be motor oil into my cattle feeding troughs. The metallic taste of combat fury fills my mouth, but I force myself to document everything instead of confronting them. Jake's federal surveillance team is recording from multiple angles. Every trespass, every act of sabotage, every piece of evidence needed for tomorrow's arrests. At 12:23 a.m., Bryce does something that seals his fate. Standing next to my cattle barn, he pulls out his phone and makes a call loud enough for my directional microphone to capture. "Phase 1 complete," he announces with the arrogance of someone who thinks he's untouchable. "Agricultural operations will be compromised by morning. Phase 2 launches at 7:30 with full community participation. If the target doesn't surrender immediately, we implement Phase 3, permanent solutions." Permanent solutions? That sounds like a threat against my family. Dorothy's radio crackles with urgent intelligence. "Jed, unusual activity at Willowbrook. Moving trucks, people loading personal items into vehicles. Some residents are evacuating like they're expecting violence." Margaret's voice joins our communication network. "Federal intercepts confirm Bryce has been telling residents tomorrow's convoy will permanently resolve the rural property conflict. He's convinced some families you might retaliate violently." The son of a bitch is painting me as the dangerous one while committing felonies on my property. Dawn reveals $3,000 in sabotage damage. Diesel fuel spilled across pasture grass, water lines cut, feeding equipment destroyed with deliberate malice. But every criminal act was captured in high-definition detail with facial recognition clarity. At 6:45 a.m., Emma calls sobbing. "Dad, someone broke into Mom's car last night. They didn't steal anything, but they left a note saying our family needs to reconsider our associations with problematic agricultural operators. Now they're directly threatening my ex-wife and daughter. Every restraint I've maintained dissolves like sugar in rain." Jake radios from his observation post. "Federal agents positioned and ready. County sheriff standing by with multiple units. 3 news crews setting up along County Road for optimal coverage. Your revenge is about to go national." At 7:15 a.m., Dorothy's voice carries excitement mixed with terror. Massive convoy forming up. 18 vehicles, luxury SUVs, pickup trucks, even motorcycles. Bryce is standing on his Mercedes giving some kind of motivational speech. Through binoculars, I watch the gathering at Willowbrook's entrance. Bryce gesticulates like a wannabe dictator addressing his suburban army, while Sutton films everything on professional camera equipment. Several vehicles have broadcasting gear mounted on roofs, satellite dishes, streaming equipment, even what appears to be drone operators. The bastard isn't just planning a trespassing incident, he's turning it into live-streamed propaganda. General Patton positions himself on the front porch, hackles raised and growling at the approaching convoy with the instinctive awareness of a combat veteran. That dog can smell criminal intent from half a mile away, and his low rumbling sounds like distant thunder promising a storm. My hydraulic bollards rest in concealed position, LED warning lights armed and ready. The remote control sits in my palm like a detonator, its weight carrying the satisfaction of 20 years' worth of engineering expertise about to be deployed against deserving targets. Margaret's urgent voice crackles over radio. Federal intercepts show Bryce promoting this as a rural versus suburban rights demonstration on social media. He's convinced followers you represent agricultural extremism threatening community safety. 7:25 a.m. The convoy begins moving with the coordinated precision of people who think they're about to win a war. 18 vehicles worth $500,000, engines revving like mechanical predators, dust clouds rising as entitled suburbanites prepare to claim victory through superior numbers. 7:27 a.m. I spot the detail that makes everything perfect. News drones hovering overhead, live stream cameras rolling, social media broadcasting equipment capturing every moment. Bryce's propaganda stunt is about to become his public humiliation. 7:28 a.m. The convoy reaches my property line, officially crossing from legal assembly into federal trespassing territory while cameras document everything and federal agents prepare arrest warrants. 7:29 a.m. Acceleration toward my pasture, luxury vehicles picking up speed like cavalry charging across an open field, heading directly toward concealed bollards at precisely the velocity I'd calculated for maximum educational impact. 7:30 a.m. My finger hovers over the remote control button. 20 years of military engineering, months of meticulous planning, and a lifetime of protecting family all converges into the next 3 seconds. Time to teach entitled criminals about consequences. 7:30 a.m. sharp, Bryce's convoy crosses my fence line like an invading army, and I let them commit fully to their crime before springing my trap. The lead Mercedes hits 35 miles per hour as it barrels toward my cattle pond, Sutton's Range Rover close behind, followed by 16 more vehicles in perfect formation. Dust clouds billow behind them like a war movie, and I can hear Bryce shouting something through his open sunroof, probably victory speeches for his live stream audience. That's when I pressed the button. The hydraulic bollards rise from their concealed positions with the mechanical precision of a Swiss watch and the unstoppable force of German engineering. 3 seconds from hidden to fully deployed. 8 inches of structural steel emerging from the earth like metallic flowers of justice. The sound that follows is the most satisfying noise I've ever heard. Bryce's Mercedes hits the first bollard at full speed with a crash that echoes across 40 acres. The front end crumples like an accordion, airbags explode in a cloud of white powder, and the rear wheels leave the ground entirely before the vehicle flips onto its side in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Sutton's Range Rover, following too closely to stop, slams into the Mercedes with another bone-rattling impact. Her luxury SUV accordions against Bryce's wreckage, steam and smoke rising from destroyed engines while safety glass sparkles in the morning sun like diamonds scattered across my pasture. But the beautiful chaos is just beginning. The third vehicle, a lifted pickup truck driven by someone who apparently thought they could jump the bollards, launches into the air like a failed stunt car, flies over both wrecked luxury vehicles, and lands nose first in my cattle pond with a tremendous splash. Water geysers 30 feet high while the truck's rear wheels spin helplessly in the air. Behind them, a chain reaction of collisions unfolds with the precision of a perfectly timed demolition. Vehicles swerving to avoid the wreckage slam into each other, creating a pile-up that looks like a demolition derby designed by an engineer with a sense of poetic justice. The morning air fills with the symphony of destruction, hissing steam, groaning metal, and the distant wail of approaching sirens as emergency services respond to what must look like a major traffic accident from their perspective. Through the smoke and dust, I see Bryce crawling out of his overturned Mercedes, blood trickling from his forehead, but his phone still clutched in his hand, apparently trying to continue live streaming his humiliation. The irony is perfect. He wanted to broadcast his victory and instead documented his complete defeat. General Patton trots over to the wreckage and lifts his leg on the Mercedes' exposed undercarriage, adding insult to injury while maintaining the dignity of a dog who knows he's just witnessed justice being served. That's when the cavalry arrives, not Bryce's suburban army, but actual law enforcement with actual authority. County sheriff's deputies pour onto my property from 3 directions, followed by federal agents in black SUVs, followed by news crews with cameras rolling. The sound of slamming car doors and barked orders fills the air as professional law enforcement takes control of what's now a federal crime scene. Jake Martinez approaches the wreckage with the grim satisfaction of a man watching a plan execute perfectly. Behind him, Margaret Smith carries a briefcase full of federal warrants and the expression of someone about to end several criminal careers. "Bryce Kellerton," Jake announces, pulling handcuffs from his belt. "You're under arrest for federal wire fraud, conspiracy to commit extortion, criminal trespassing, and about 15 other charges that'll keep you busy for the next decade." Bryce, still bleeding and disoriented, tries to assert his fake authority one last time. "This is harassment. I'm the president of Willowbrook Estates HOA. We have established access rights." Sir, Margaret steps forward with documents that smell like fresh ink and federal justice. "Actually, you're a fraud artist who's been stealing county money for 5 years. Willowbrook Estates isn't legally an HOA. You never had any easement rights, and every dollar you've taken from county taxpayers is documented in these financial records." The look on Bryce's face when he realizes his entire criminal enterprise has been exposed is worth every penny I spent on hydraulic bollards. It's the expression of a man watching his world collapse in real time while federal agents read him his rights. Sutton, being extracted from her Range Rover by paramedics, keeps demanding her lawyer, while federal agents explain that her real estate license is the least of her worries. Money laundering and conspiracy charges tend to overshadow professional licensing issues. As handcuffs click on the remaining trespassers and news crews capture every moment for evening broadcasts, I feel the deep satisfaction of a mission accomplished with precision and overwhelming success. 20 years of military engineering just delivered the most effective property rights education in Texas history, and it was all perfectly legal. The wreckage spread across my pasture like a monument to the consequences of criminal stupidity. 18 vehicles in various states of destruction. Some crumpled against my bollards, others tangled in chain reaction collisions. One pickup truck still nose-deep in my cattle pond with its rear wheels spinning uselessly in the morning air. The smell of leaking automotive fluids mixed with Texas prairie grass created an industrial bouquet that would linger for weeks. But the real show was just beginning. News crews positioned along the county road captured everything in high-definition detail as federal agents systematically arrested every single trespasser. The lead story on 3 television stations would feature Bryce Kellerton being handcuffed while bleeding from his forehead, still trying to live stream his humiliation to whatever followers hadn't abandoned his social media accounts. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the assembled media, standing next to my perfectly functioning steel bollards with General Patton at my side, "what you've witnessed today is the natural consequence of organized criminal activity meeting properly engineered property defense." The crowd of reporters, federal agents, and curious neighbors who'd gathered created an impromptu press conference in my front yard. Margaret Smith stepped forward with the federal evidence that would destroy Bryce's criminal enterprise forever. For 5 years, Bryce Kellerton has been defrauding county taxpayers through his company Phoenix Development Solutions, Margaret announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's taken down white-collar criminals across 3 states. He stole $847,000 in public funds meant for road construction, then used systematic harassment to force rural landowners off their property as a cover-up. She held up bank records and contracts while news cameras rolled. Every HOA access right claim was fraudulent. Every environmental complaint was fabricated. Every pressure tactic was designed to hide massive theft from public coffers. Dorothy Pemberton, now revealed as the whistleblower who'd preserved crucial evidence for years, addressed the crowd with the righteous anger of a woman who'd watched good people get betrayed. Bryce convinced Martha Hendricks to allow neighborhood traffic through her property by promising that road construction was temporary. That sweet woman died believing the county would build the road they'd paid for. Federal agent Sarah Williams took the microphone with the professional bearing of someone who'd just concluded a successful white-collar crime investigation. Today's arrests conclude a federal investigation into organized real estate fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit extortion. The evidence gathered will ensure prosecution to the full extent of federal law. Behind her, paramedics finished extracting Sutton Blackwood from her destroyed Range Rover, while federal agents prepared additional charges related to real estate fraud and professional licensing violations. But my favorite moment came when a reporter asked about the bollard system that had so effectively stopped the criminal convoy. These defensive barriers are completely legal under Texas property code, I explained, gesturing toward the steel posts that had performed exactly as engineered. Property owners have every right to protect their land from criminal trespass using appropriate defensive measures provided they give reasonable warning. I pointed to the LED warning lights and clear signage posted around my property. Motion sensors activated warning lights 5 seconds before barrier deployment. Every person who chose to continue trespassing did so with full knowledge of the consequences. The reporter pressed further. Some people might say your response was extreme. That's when I delivered what Jake later called my mic drop moment. Ma'am, these criminals threatened my teenage daughter, destroyed my property, stole nearly $1 million from county taxpayers, and systematically harassed multiple rural families into abandoning their homes and livelihoods. The only extreme thing about my response is how long I waited to implement it. The assembled crowd, federal agents, news crews, neighbors, and even some of the trespassers waiting for medical clearance fell completely silent as the weight of Bryce's crimes became clear to everyone present. General Patton chose that moment to approach the wreckage and lift his leg on Bryce's overturned Mercedes one more time, apparently making a final editorial comment on the morning's events. The laughter that followed broke the tension and provided perfect ending footage for the evening news. County Sheriff Rodriguez stepped forward to address property rights concerns that had emerged during the investigation. This case demonstrates why we take trespassing complaints seriously, and why property owners shouldn't have to tolerate systematic harassment. Mr. Hawkins followed proper legal procedures, documented everything appropriately, and defended his family's safety using methods that any Texas landowner has the right to employ. As tow trucks began the expensive process of removing 18 destroyed vehicles from my pasture, at their owner's expense, I felt the deep satisfaction of a perfectly executed military operation, justice served with precision engineering, criminal enterprise destroyed with overwhelming force, and family safety secured through decisive action. The best part? It was all completely legal. 6 months later, my ranch is more peaceful than I ever imagined possible. Bryce Kellerton is serving 7 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. The judge called his crimes a systematic betrayal of public trust that undermined both county governance and rural property rights. Sutton Blackwood received 5 years and permanent loss of her real estate license. The other conspirators got sentences ranging from probation to 3 years, depending on their level of involvement. More importantly, the county recovered $2 million in stolen funds and used the money to finally build the road that should have connected Willowbrook to public highways 5 years ago. No more shortcuts through private property. Everyone uses legitimate public access now. My steel bollards remain in place as a permanent reminder that property rights aren't suggestions. The LED warning system has triggered exactly 0 times since the mass arrests, though I've had several groups of engineering students visit to study the hydraulic deployment mechanism. Apparently, my defensive system is being used as a case study in 3 different universities for practical applications of property law and mechanical engineering. The civil lawsuit settled for $850,000. Paid by the defendants' insurance companies. Most of that money went toward expanding my organic cattle operation and establishing what Emma now calls the best college fund in Texas history. And she's planning to study agricultural law and says she wants to protect rural families from the kind of harassment we endured. Dorothy Pemberton was elected mayor of our county district on a platform of government transparency and rural property protection. Her first official act was establishing an oversight committee to prevent future development fraud. Margaret Smith serves as the committee's forensic accounting consultant, ensuring that public money actually gets spent on public projects. The ranch itself has flourished beyond my original dreams. 20 additional acres of native prairie restoration, a new cattle barn built with settlement funds, and an educational program that brings urban school groups out to learn about sustainable agriculture. The sweet morning smell of prairie grass and wildflowers has returned now that diesel convoys no longer pollute my air. General Patton has become something of a local celebrity. The hardware store sells Patton Patrol t-shirts with proceeds going to veterans organizations, and that dog receives fan mail from property rights advocates across the country. He still positions himself strategically during morning coffee, but now he's watching for visiting school groups rather than criminal trespassers. The community healing has been remarkable. Willowbrook residents, once they learned the truth about Bryce's fraud, have become some of my strongest supporters. Several families now buy beef directly from my ranch, and their kids participate in our agricultural education programs. What started as urban-rural conflict transformed into genuine community cooperation. But the most satisfying outcome is the Hawkins Rural Property Rights Scholarship, a $100,000 endowment that helps rural students study agricultural law, property rights, and sustainable farming practices. The scholarship ensures that future generations will have the legal knowledge to protect their family's land from fraud and harassment. We also established the Martha Hendricks Memorial Prairie Conservation Project, expanding native grassland restoration to 200 acres in partnership with the State Wildlife Department. The project honors the memory of the woman who was deceived by Bryce's lies while creating habitat that will benefit wildlife for generations. Every fall, we host Bollard Days Festival, a celebration that's become a regional attraction supporting local agriculture and property rights education. Featured events include engineering demonstrations, sustainable farming workshops, and General Patton's famous Security Dog Training exhibition. Last year's festival attracted 3,000 visitors and raised $50,000 for rural legal defense funds. The documentary rights to our story sold for $500,000 to a streaming service that's turning it into a feature about rural property rights and federal white-collar crime prosecution. Jake Martinez serves as technical consultant, ensuring the military engineering aspects are portrayed accurately. As I sit on my wraparound porch this morning, coffee steaming in the crisp air while meadowlarks call from fence posts and cattle graze peacefully across 40 acres of protected land, I feel the deep satisfaction of a mission accomplished with honor and precision. Sometimes the best defense really is an overwhelmingly effective offense, especially when it's perfectly legal and serves justice to people who richly deserve it.